More than anything, maybe, our next guest is a survivor junkie. He's a former contestant and was actually the first voted off the island in season 28. Oh, yeah, he was also the president of the Miami Marlins. He hosts the podcast Nothing Personal with David Samson. Let's welcome him into the show right now. Thanks so much for joining us, David. Say good morning to Kansas City.
Good morning, Kansas City. Happy to be here. How are you?
Doing fantastic this morning, even though it's kind of a wet, dreary day here. You were a contestant on season 28, unfortunately, the first voted off of the island. What memories kind of stand out from your survivor experience?
The number one memory is at the tribal council, the first tribal council, when I realized that I was being blindsided. I had an idea that I may have had a problem, but you don't want to believe it. And I was sitting there. Jeff Probst is reading the votes. I realized that I'm about to be voted off. And the first thing that occurred to me was, for the rest of my life, I am going to be a first boot on Survivor.
Oh, no.
It's the only thing I didn't want to happen. But then I thought more clearly after I got some food and realized that being first off, it's the same as coming in second. Either you win or the rest are losers, so you might as well lose quickly.
That's right. Well, while you were sitting there, is there anything that you regretted doing, or you're like, oh, I should have done this instead, and then I wouldn't have been this first voted off?
So I'll tell you how it works. You meet in L.A., you meet the rest of your cast, except you're not allowed to talk to them. It's total silence. You travel to the location in total silence with security around you.
Oh.
And I saw Cliff Robinson, who was on my season, the former NBA player who I knew but had never met him before. I didn't know what the theme was, didn't know anything. There was this big guy, and he was eating all the food. He was so annoying, and I said, I don't want to even be near this guy. And he was on my tribe, in the Brains tribe. And the first move I made was to spoil it and say, I want you off the tribe.
Oh.
And it turns out he's the nicest guy in the world. And I totally messed it up. And it was the end of my game. And you look forward to it for so long, and then it's gone just like that.
Man.
But I don't regret it at all.
Well, you've done quite a bit. You've also do tons of marathons and a lot of other athletic events. Where does Survivor rank on some of the hardest things that you've ever done?
So I don't think it ranks as one of the hardest things I've ever done. I've always loved Survivor. I started when I was working for the Expos when Survivor debuted.
Yeah.
And our video guy would give us a VCR tape of the episode, and we'd watch it in the box after our game was over and after our post-game responsibilities were over. And I said, I'm a city boy. I want to do this show. So I applied and got accepted. And the whole process of being accepted and taking an IQ test and getting shots and going to doctors, all of that was fascinating. The pregame where you are getting tested again. And then when they say, okay, we're starting to film, all of that is so exciting. And then you realize, wait a minute, there really is no food. There are no beds. I don't want to live like this.
Yeah.
Bring me to the Four Seasons. Come on. But it was a very cool thing. But in terms of true difficulty, this past summer, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and ran a marathon from the summit.
Oh, my goodness.
That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
That's incredible. That's amazing. Well, I kind of want to talk more about that, but let's get over to some more Survivor talk. Last night, Carolyn had some weird stuff come up. There might be kind of maybe a showmance in the works. The tribe spoke. What's your takeaway then from last night's episode?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I can't believe that guy, the nuclear rocket scientist, I can't believe that he built in 3D all the puzzles and practiced on them. I had Flint in my garage with Larry Beinfest, who was the GM of the Marlins. We were using Flint in the driveway to try to make fire. That was the extent of my preparation. And now you've got people who are building all the different games and puzzles. Give me a break. That made me smile. But the concept of a showmance is very interesting because you just don't want to do anything that brings attention to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't want to have the illusion of power or have an idol and then tell people, yet people like Brandon still make the mistake of telling people. I don't really understand how that works. Although Brandon didn't tell Maddie, but he then did. The truth is, it's so hard. The people are so good at the game, but it's so random.
So you kind of said you kind of want to fly under the radar. So is that the advice that you would maybe give some of the remaining contestants?
I think that it's hard to know. Don't forget, they film 24 hours a day. It's 3 8-hour shifts. There's always camera people there. There's always producers. There's always people with a boom. So it's not like even on Exile Island, you're alone. That was one of the things I said, side note, when I applied and they wanted me to be on. I said, I'm happy to do the show, but I can never be alone. I'm too scared. And they said, don't worry, you'll never be alone. There'll always be someone taking a picture and filming. I think the key is that there's so much happening, you don't know what's going to be edited in.
Yeah.
So we only see the character arc that were shown by the great editors of Survivor. But in order to win the game, the difficulty is that you have to be popular, not too popular. Strong, not too strong. Good looking, not too good looking. Nerdy, but not too nerdy. And so everybody's walking the line. And as the game progresses, the line gets so blurry because you're hungry.
Of where
you're
it is,
tired,
yeah.
You're paranoid.
Real quick, 30 seconds left. What do you think's going to happen on next week's episode?
So they always do the previews,
Yeah.
right? And it's always hard to know what happens with those previews. But I think what you're going to see as this show continues, that bromance, that showmance is going to get broken up. And I think they're going to realize very quickly that the power is not resting where they think. And I think you'll watch that evolve. So I think it's going to proceed as any of the seasons do, and it's going to be fantastic. Can't wait.
All right, we'll have to see how it ends up. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. David Samson, maybe same time next week?
Oh, you never know. All you got to do is ask.
All right, there it is. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time this morning. If you want more of David, you can catch Nothing Personal with David Samson every day. That's anywhere you get your podcasts. And don't forget, you can watch season 44 of Survivor every Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here on KCTV 5.